evening, everyone, and welcome to the first public hearing regarding the monitor of the Rochester City School District. This evening with you is myself, Kevin McDonald, District Superintendent of the Genesee Valley Educational Partnership. I am your moderator and host. We have State Monitor, Dr. Shelley Jallow. We have Rochester City School District Superintendent, Dr. Leslie Myers-Small. And from the New York State Education Department, we have Ira Schwartz. This evening, we would ask, as Marisol said, for everybody to please turn off your video if you are not speaking. And a reminder to those who may be in a waiting room that are planning to speak with us tonight, that we are going to have a 30 to 40 minute presentation prior to the speakers who have signed up. Dr. Jallow is going to do a presentation on state law and regulations regarding school district governance and intervention. And the opportunity for public comments will take place at the end. Can we just pause for 1 second, please? Tom?
Yes, sir.
On the PowerPoint, I don't have the notes. I apologize.
Same here.
Tom, can you take us to the title screen for 1 second, please?
Good evening, everybody. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We think we have it sorted out and we are ready to go this evening. Good evening, welcome. I am Kevin McDonald, District Superintendent of the Genesee Valley Educational Partnership and your moderator for today's virtual public hearing of the monitor for the Rochester City School District. Today's public hearing is on the subject of state authority pertaining to school district governance and interventions. In my role as moderator, I will explain for viewers and participants how this hearing will be conducted, call upon speakers who wish to make comments or ask questions during this public hearing, ensure that public comments have been received prior to the hearing, are entered into the public record, and, if time permits, give panelists an opportunity to answer questions that have been submitted. I am joined this evening by Dr. Shelley Jallow, the monitor for the Rochester City School District, Dr. Leslie Myers-Small, the superintendent of the district, and Mr. Ira Schwartz, who will be representing the New York State Education Department. Our agenda for today's meeting is as follows. I will first explain how this virtual public hearing will be conducted and how persons may participate in the hearing. Next, Dr. Jallow will do a presentation on state law and regulations regarding school district governance and intervention so that we can all have some common information about this topic. I will then provide an opportunity for persons who are participating in this public hearing to make comments regarding this topic. This will be followed, if time allows, by my summarizing of public comments that we have received prior to this meeting. Then, if time allows, Dr. Jallow and Mr. Schwartz will respond to questions that were submitted prior to the hearing. We will end with a review of the next steps in the process, which includes the conducting of 2 additional hearings on July 8th and July 22nd, pertaining to the academic and fiscal status of the school district. After Dr. Jallow has finished her presentation, we will open it up for questions from everyone who emailed us indicating that they would like to speak today. When the time comes for public comments, I will call upon each speaker in the order that they signed up to speak. When I call your name, your microphone will be unmuted. You will then be given 3 minutes to make your statement. When you have 30 seconds remaining in your allotted time, I will inform you. After 3 minutes, I will thank you for your statement, mute your microphone, and we will then move on to our next speaker. If anyone wants to submit a comment who did not email us, you can still submit your comment to statemonitor@rcsdk12.org, and your comment will be made part of the record of this hearing. Now I'll introduce Dr. Shelley Jallow.
Thank you, Kevin, and welcome to all who are participating in tonight's virtual hearing. I am Shelley Jallow, the monitor appointed by the Commissioner to the Rochester City School District. I have decades of experience in school district improvement and have served as a senior director of school improvement in the Learning Innovations Program at West Ed. Prior to my time at West Ed, I supervised, coached, and mentored school and district leaders in school districts throughout New Jersey, representing low-performing elementary, middle, and high schools. I am very familiar with the academic and fiscal challenges faced by districts such as Rochester. This hearing is being conducted to meet the requirements of a new state law that directs the Commissioner of Education to appoint a monitor to the Rochester School District. The Rochester School District is not unique in this regard. Similar provisions of law also require the Commissioner to appoint monitors to the Hempstead and Wyandanch school districts. As the Rochester monitor, I am charged with providing oversight, guidance, and technical assistance related to the educational and fiscal policies, practices, programs, and decisions of the school district and its Board of Education and Superintendent, During my time in office, I will be a member of the Board of Education and will attend all board meetings, but I will not vote on any issues. I will assist the board to adopt a revised conflict of interest policy based on a model policy provided by the State Education Department. My core responsibilities are to provide a proposed academic improvement and a proposed financial plan for the district no later than the 1st of November 2020 for the 2020-2021 school year and for the 4 subsequent school years. Then, beginning with the 21-22 school year budget, I will review the district's budget each year to ensure that the budget is based on reasonable estimates of revenues and expenditures, is balanced, and is consistent with district academic improvement. I will report semi-annually to state officials on the academic, fiscal, and operational status of the district. I will assist in resolving any disputes and conflicts between the superintendent and the board, and among members of the board. I can disapprove travel outside the state paid for by the district. In addition, I can recommend for a vote by the board cost-saving measures, including, but not limited to, shared service agreements. Finally, I can notify the board in writing regarding violations of the academic or fiscal plan, and if they are not satisfactorily resolved, I can ask the Commissioner of Education to direct the board to cease any action not consistent with the academic improvement or fiscal plan. The public hearing we are conducting today is required by the state law that established the position of the monitor. We are doing the hearings this month and in July because by law, they must be conducted within 60 days of my appointment. The first hearing is to take public comments and answer questions about state laws and regulations pertaining to education law, including the provision of Education Law Section 306 that specifies the conditions under which the commissioner may remove board members or withhold funds from a district. 2 additional hearings will be held in July regarding the academic and fiscal performance of the district. Before we discuss the state role in school governance, it might be worth reminding ourselves that there are 3 key players in school governance: local boards of education and the state and federal governments. Most of the key decisions about how schools operate are made by local boards of education and implemented by school superintendents. The state and federal governments may also adopt laws and regulations that impact school governance. Often the federal government does this by requiring states and school districts to take certain actions in exchange for receiving federal funds. For example, the federal government may require that students be taught by certified teachers as a condition to receive funds. The state in turn may set the standards for certification of teachers. The local school board then determines which persons to recruit and hire as teachers, determines their assignments, provides these teachers with professional development, evaluates their performance, and ultimately decides whether to issue tenure to these teachers. At this hearing, we will focus on the state role in governance and intervention. It should be noted that unlike most other school districts in New York and in the United States, the authority of the State Education Department, the Commissioner of Education, and the Board of Regents derives from state law. Section 101 of the state law is foundational to this authority and charges the New York State Education Department with the general management and supervision of all public schools and educational work of the state. And the commissioner the power to adopt rules and regulations to carry out state education laws and the functions and duties conferred on the department. Rules and regulations must go through an extensive public comment process before they are permanently adopted. And once adopted, they have the force of law. Education law also provides the state education department with the authority to visit, examine, and inspect school districts and their schools. All educational and cultural institutions in New York, including public schools, belong to something called the University of the State of New York, which is not to be confused with the State University of New York. Indeed, all of the colleges and universities in the State University of New York, along with all other institutions of higher education, are part of the University of the State of New York. Think of the University of the State of New York as all of the organizations and people who are subject to the authority of the State Board of Regents and the Commissioner of Education. The Commissioner of Education is the president of the University of the State of New York and has much authority under the law. By the way, there are 17 members of the Board of Regents who are appointed by the members of the state legislature to 5-year terms. 12 members of the Board of Regents represent specific parts of the state. The Regent for Rochester is Vice Chancellor T. Andrew Brown, who was first appointed to the Board of Regents in the year 2012. In 2019, he was unanimously elected by his fellow regents as Vice Chancellor. A second member of the Board of Regents, Wade S. Norwood, represents the state at large, but has deep roots in Rochester. The Commissioner of Education is in turn appointed by the Board of Regents and serves at its pleasure. Key responsibilities of the Commissioner include enforcing laws related to the educational system of the state and executing all educational policies determined by the Board of Regents, having general supervision over all schools, advising and guiding school officers of all districts and cities of the state in relation to their duties and the general management of schools under their control. Both federal and state education law, as well as commissioners' regulations, give the commissioner significant authority and responsibilities to oversee a system by which districts and schools are held accountable for academic achievement of students. At the federal level, New York receives approximately $1.8 billion annually under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act to provide services to those groups of students who have traditionally faced the greatest educational challenges, such as low-income students, English language learners, and incarcerated youth. In exchange for this funding, New York is expected to differentiate school performance and identify low-achieving schools for additional supports and interventions. Education Law 211A and the Commissioner's Regulations 100.21 are the basis upon which the state meets these federal requirements. In New York, the Commissioner annually determines which districts should be targeted for additional support and interventions, as well as which schools should also be so targeted. There are two designations for such schools. Comprehensive support and improvement schools are designated because of the performance of all students in the school, and targeted support and improvement schools are designated because of the performance of specific school groups of students in a school. These schools are required to develop and implement school comprehensive education plans and receive funding from the State Education Department to assist in implementing these plans. The majority of schools in Rochester have been designated as either CSI schools, comprehensive support and improvement schools, or TSI, targeted support and improvement schools. When school districts have schools that remain low performing year after year, the Commissioner may assign a distinguished educator to the school district. To date, distinguished educators have been appointed in Rochester, Buffalo, and Hempstead school districts. In 2018, then Commissioner Elia appointed Dr. Jaime Aquino as distinguished educator to Rochester School District. I anticipate that much of my work will build upon the findings and recommendations made by Dr. Aquino in his report. Section 211E of the Education Law provides that a school board, subject to the approval of the Commissioner, is authorized to contract for a period of up to 5 years with an educational partnership organization, also known as an EPO, to intervene in a school designated by the lowest achieving school as a persistently lowest achieving school, consistent with federal requirements, or a school under registration review. The EPO assumes the powers and duties of the superintendent of schools for the purposes of implementing the educational program of the school, including making recommendations to the board on the budgetary decisions, staffing population decisions, student discipline decisions, decisions on curriculum, and determining the daily schedule and school calendar, all of which must be consistent with the applicable collective bargaining agreements. The contract with the EPO must include district performance expectations and/or benchmarks for school operations and academic outcomes. And failure to meet such expectations or benchmarks may be grounds for termination of the contract. There are currently 2 schools in Rochester, East Upper and East Lower, for which the University of Rochester is serving as the EPO. Another provision of state law pertains to schools that have been struggling with low academic achievement over a period of 3 years. These schools can be placed under receivership by the commissioner. Once in receivership, the superintendent of the district is given special authority that allows the superintendent to take actions in some cases without the permission of the school board and to modify certain aspects of collective bargaining agreements. There are currently 40 schools in receivership in 11 districts. There are 14 schools in Rochester that were in receivership during the 2019-20 school year. The following schools operated under receivership during the school year. Dr. Walter Cooper Academy, School 16, School 19, Dr. Charles T. Lunsford, School 28, Henry Hudson, School 33, Audubon, Joseph C. Wilson Foundation Academy, Edison Career and Technology High School, Vanguard Collegiate High School, Integrated Arts and Technology High School, Leadership Academy for Young Men, East Upper High School, James Monroe High School, excuse me one second. The last ones were Northeast Collegiate Prep, and I can't get the last one. I apologize, bear with me one moment. East Lower High School. There are two types of receivership, superintendent receivership and independent receivership. To date, all schools that have been placed in receivership have had the superintendent of the district serve as the receiver for the school. Schools remain under superintendent receiver as long as the school makes demonstrable improvement or until the school meets the conditions for removal from receivership. If the school fails to make them demonstrable improvement, one of the two things can happen. The school can have an independent receiver assigned, or the district can submit a plan to close the school. And if desired, replace the school with a new school. One school in receivership in Rochester, School 41, Kodak Park, failed to make that improvement and was closed and replaced by the Rise School. An independent receiver has the authority to, 1, manage and operate all aspects of the school, 2, develop and implement a school intervention plan for the school that considers the recommendation of statutorily established community engagement team, and 3, supersede any decision, policy, or regulation of the superintendent or chief school officer, school board, another school officer, or the building principal that in receiver's sole judgment conflicts with the school intervention plan, provided, however, that the receiver may not supersede decisions that are not directly linked to the school intervention plan. The superintendent receiver is vested with all the powers of an independent receiver, except that the superintendent is not allowed to override any decision of the Board of Education with respect to his or her employment status. Every public school in New York must be registered by the Board of Regents in order to operate. Beginning in 1989, the Board of Regents put in place a process by which those schools that were farthest from the state standards and most in need of improvement had their registration placed under review. These schools received additional support and the interventions to help them implement improvement plans. If these schools did not improve, the district was required to close the school or have the registration of the school revoked, which would result in the commissioner giving a district a plan for what it must do with the students who were attending the school. A number of schools in Rochester were placed under registration review, and a number have closed and been replaced as a result of this process. For example, the old Edison High School were schools that closed as a result of the SIR process. After the commissioner adopted these regulations, Section 211B of the Education Law was enacted, which made the requirement that the commissioner identify SIR schools as part of education law. When the receivership law was enacted, the registration review process became largely subsumed by the receivership process. That is, schools that were placed in receivership were also identified as SIR. Schools that are removed from receivership are also removed from SIR, and the actions that schools in receivership take meet the requirements for SIR schools. Under very specific circumstances, the commissioner can identify schools that have conditions that threaten the health, safety, or educational welfare for students under registration review. One of the most powerful authorities that the commissioner has is the ability to remove schools who have willfully violated or neglected their duty. It should be noted that the standard for removal is very high. School board members are elected representatives of the people, and therefore only in the most extraordinary cases would it be appropriate for the commissioner, who is not elected, to remove from office a school board member who is elected. For example, to meet the standards for removal, it must be shown the person intentionally violated an education law with a wrongful purpose. Indeed, the standard is so high that even criminal conduct by a school officer is not in itself grounds for removal from office. Removal of school officers happens only rarely, as the law intends for the voters in a school district to decide who shall be their representatives. The commissioner may withhold district funds if warranted. The commissioner also has a general power and duty to enforce education law. The power is regularly used to require school districts to implement corrective action plans when districts are not carrying out their responsibilities to provide services to students. These corrective action plans very frequently involve the provision of services to English language learners, students with disabilities, homeless youth, and other educationally challenged groups.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jallo, for that overview of state law and regulation. Now that we have reviewed the key provisions of state law that address school governance and interventions, we are going to begin to take public comment for those who have signed up to speak. I'd like to remind everybody that each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their statement and ask their question. We are going to call on you in the order in which we have received your request. At that time, you will be unmuted and have 3 minutes to speak. During your time, I will provide you a 30-second warning. At the conclusion, you will be muted and thanked for your comments. We appreciate everybody's time in being here this evening. I thank you in advance for your cooperation and following the procedure. This should be a very productive public meeting. So without further ado, the very first person who signed up to speak tonight is Precious Henderson. Is Precious Henderson with us? She is not. So number 2 on our list is Jessica Nordquist, a parent in the school district. Jessica, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Good evening. I come to you as a parent in this district, particularly concerned with social and emotional priorities as we review the governance of this district. In a timely email from a district partner, the M.K. Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence, the iceberg model of understanding culture was included. This helped to frame my thoughts and concerns around our district and its governance. The devastation in the last year is still hard to swallow. We lost teachers, social workers, leaders, and inequity amongst districts repeatedly was thrown in our face. How can we get below the surface of the events? So I'm hoping you, as our state monitor, can assist with that. I'm a strengths-based person and see so much beauty, growth, and change in Rochester, so I want to share the iceberg with why my family remains committed to the RCSD in the hopes that all here can build on those assets together in the future. So let's start with events. This is the tip of the iceberg, what we see. We have a community of students, teachers, and parents wanting to be engaged in the work. At my son's school, he was part of the protest when teachers were laid off and given a vehicle for his voice, along with so many other scholars. Our Rock Restorative Youth lead restorative trainings with peers and adults across the district and in the community, pushing, leading, and growing the work in ways we could never imagine. In the last year, in response to the year's events, layoffs, Black Lives Matter, and activism in breaking the school to prison pipeline by removing SROs from school buildings. The youth are crying out to lead in this district, and how can that be at the heart of our governance? The next layer just below the surface are patterns of behavior. So what do we do with youth voice when there is a revolving door of leadership? We have leaders who have built strong community partnerships to empower youth, not only in our schools, but also our streets, yet struggle to effectively do so when answering to a new leader every year. We need unified leaders invested in our city, and we need to keep them. The leadership of past years and the Chief of Student Support Services has continually asked hard questions, advocated and led this work, and the evidence lies in the drop in suspension rate and a growing thirst among adults and students to engage in anti-racism work. Currently, this position will no longer exist next year, so I'm asking, how will we ensure the work will continue with the same efficacy? Just below patterns, we come upon system structure. The structures we've been left to work with are bare, but some are doing amazing work despite that by systematically mobilizing all in the community. In past years, centralizing the leadership of social work, school counseling, alternative programs, school health, attendance, trauma, illness, and grief team, and restorative practices under the Chief of Student Support Services, while infusing a trauma-informed and culturally responsive lens of instruction, enabled anti-racism and equity work to be done in all components of student support. It is imperative there is a structure of experienced leadership knowledgeable and connected to the city of Rochester. Mental models lie at the very bottom and is at the heart of what we need to think about today. So what assumptions and beliefs are going to shape us? Here's my hope. We need collaboration among teachers, parents, youth, and community members as we prioritize the social emotional well-being of all, as we transition from COVID, as we transition SROs out of our buildings, as we build communities founded on racial justice and restorative practices. We need leadership explicitly talking about this, funding it at the district and the state level, spending our money on the direct needs of our students' social, emotional support, and lifting youth voice around this. That is what I want for every single person in this district, for my children, for my fellow parents, for my colleagues, and for my city. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you for your comments, much appreciated. At this time, our next speaker is with us. Our next speaker is Jennifer Bannister. Jennifer Bannister joins us as a community member. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
You are good, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Welcome to Dr. Jallow and to also Superintendent Leslie Myers-Small. I'm Jennifer Bannister. I work with the Center for Teen Empowerment, and I live in the Beechwood neighborhood near North Goodman. And I'm looking really forward to working with both of you. I want to highlight a highly successful initiative that has also been a highly effective community partnership that it really has been largely missed in fights over governance, but that also has everything to do with good governance that is responsive and that benefits from the expertise that exists within the community among students, parents, teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, and practitioners in youth leadership development, mental health, juvenile justice, nonviolence, and restorative practices. This partnership through the Community Task Force on School Climate integrated these stakeholders with all levels of district leadership over 6 years, since 2014 in true partnership. We can talk more in your academics public hearing about how this initiative reduced suspensions and built a supportive school climate and how that has improved graduation rates. Data has shown that by keeping students in school learning, they are failing at least 28% fewer courses and thus attaining credits that they need to graduate. As well, in 2018, Distinguished Educator Aquino endorsed all of the school climate recommendations that came out of this partnership. The following 3 areas are what this community needs from and with our governance. They come directly from the experiences of both the process and the impact that's been realized by the district and community partners together in this Community Task Force on School Climate work, including students and parents. We need partnership, first of all. And that requires accessible, accountable leaders who embrace the voice of an engaged community, even when it is challenging, and maybe especially when it is challenging, because that's where you see and understand the fissures, where we need to rebuild trust, along with the gaps and the creative solutions. To have such a partnership, we need leaders inside the district who have deep embedded experience in their fields and in our community, and who have demonstrated unceasing accountability to students and families. Second, we need proven continuity. We have carried this initiative through now to our 7th superintendent in 6 years. We have had to rebuild and restate the case that the community and the data have shown clearly over and over. Keep students in school and learning, work with racial equity and anti-racism at the forefront of every step we take, and build the relationships and a culture that supports everyone's growth, students all the way to central office and back. We need the people in place who know this work inside and out and who have carried the work forward. I'll name some of them specifically who have maintained cohesiveness of vision on the ground and implementation and have never wavered throughout the transience of district leadership. Chief Idonia Owens, who carried us through the new code of conduct that supports students' learning and problem solving rather than push out. Chief Keisha Morgan, who has been overseeing the response to the Attorney General's sanction against RCSD for over-suspending and over-classifying Black and Brown students as special needs. And Chief Ruth Turner, who has been absolutely essential in everything that our district has needed and needs now more than ever as we deal with the trauma of COVID-19 and the shift from SROs to more deeply rooted sources of safety. Ruth Turner is the reason that Rock Restorative exists and is seeing the results that it's seeing. She is the best example of a district leader who builds relationships amongst staff and students and partners enthusiastically to receive the assets that run deep in our community to support our students. She understands adverse childhood experience.
Jennifer, thank you for your comments. Much appreciated. Well stated. Thank you so much. Okay, our next public speaker is Stephanie Vargas. Stephanie joins us this evening as a community member. Stephanie, as you join us, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I was watching on Facebook, so there's a bit of a delay. My name is Stevie Vargas. I am
3 minutes. Go ahead.
okay. Thank you. Hi, my name is Stevie Vargas. I'm a community organizer, but also a community member. And in my role, I oftentimes speak to parents, students, and teachers in regard to what's happening in our community and what they want to see. As we enter this new year, we are going to be dealing with traumas in our students related to COVID. This year, we lost teachers, we lost social workers. I'm sorry, can you guys hear me? I got a notification pop up.
I can hear you, yes.
You can hear
But
me?
we
Okay.
cannot see you.
Can't see
Okay.
you.
Okay, hold on. Good?
Can see and hear you now.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that. This past year, our students have lost their teachers, they've lost social workers, they lost counselors. And to us, those are our first responders for our students. Those are the people on the ground responding to traumas and social emotional supports that our students need. In the coming year, our students are going to need that more than ever, especially in regards to dealing with COVID and the after effects of COVID. It is essential that when we talk about governance and community building, that we invest in those resources. We have an amazing restorative practice program that has not been invested in an equitable way that really supports the emotional supports of our students. So while we are reimagining what education and community safety for our students look like, RCSD is reimagining what policing looks like for our students. We need to be able to get on the same page and invest in emotional supports. And we need people in those positions overseeing those programs who are experienced and have always put our students first. And that would be Ruth Turner. You've seen our students take time away from their education to fight for what they want. They fought to get SROs out of schools. They have fought for their teachers. They have fought for their social workers. It is imperative that the district listens to the students, the parents, and the teachers and works in their interest. And it is imperative that we work to uplift the programs that work, such as the restorative practice program that has worked to decrease the amount of suspensions in RCSD. When we talk about community safety and we talk about safety within our schools, we need to also talk about what that looks like. And it's the help zones. It's the restorative coaches.
30 seconds, Stevie.
It's the people that work with our students' social emotional supports. It's not over policing. And it's imperative that we work with the people who are experienced and knowledgeable about these programs and these systems that we need to put in place and we need to invest in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Much appreciated. Okay, our final is Amon Scanlon. Amon comes to us as a community member. And Amon, as we bring you aboard, the floor is yours.
Sorry, just let me mute my delay here. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Dr. Jallow. My name is Eamon Scanlon. I am the Education Policy Manager at the Children's Agenda here in Rochester, New York. We welcome you and hope that your role as State Monitor for RCSD will bring stability and ultimately benefit the students and families of this district. The Children's Agenda advocates for effective policies and drives evidence-based solutions for the health, education, and success of children. We are especially committed to children who are vulnerable because of poverty, racism, health disparities, and trauma. For the last 3 years, we have reviewed the Rochester City School District budget to promote evidence-based policies and programs for students. The issue of governance has been raised many times during the past 3 years, and the Children's Agenda's position has been that the policies enacted by the district and the resources available to fully implement those policies are what matters most. Any change to the governance structure of RCSD that ignores institutional racism, poverty, adequate state funding, and the shared struggle of dozens of other poor, urban, segregated school districts in New York State will not have a meaningful impact on the academic outcomes or financial health of RCSD. When programs are well-resourced and maintained for longer than the tenure of a single superintendent, they have shown meaningful gains for students. The most notable success in the past 5 years has been the work to improve school climate. The Children's Agenda's report in 2019, in partnership with the Community Task Force on School Climate, showed the great successes of reforms to RCSD's Code of Conduct and the implementation of restorative practices in reducing suspensions by 40%. The drop in suspensions of 40% was associated with thousands of fewer courses failed by RCSD students and aligns with the recent rise in graduation rates. This is thanks to the great work of former Chief of Student Support Services Ruth Turner, Chief of Student Equity Dr. Idonia Owens, the Rock Restorative Team, and the Student Rock Restorative Responders that have promoted a model of community building in place of exclusionary discipline. Despite the obvious success of restorative practices and the reformed Code of Conduct, those gains have been under constant attack by successive superintendents who were not present during the initial reforms. The constant churn in leadership is a great threat to the stability of RCSD and its progress as a district. Too often, state interventions lead to more instability and turnover, rather than providing targeted support to identify problems or tackling the larger systemic issues that create racially segregated school districts with near universal poverty. Please use your role as state monitor to solidify what is working at RCSD. Too many successful programs have come and gone because of changes in leadership or budget constraints.
30 seconds.
Ensure that RCSD moves to become a restorative district and fully dismantles the school-to-prison pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amon, for your comments. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, those were the 4 speakers who were able to join us tonight who had previously asked to speak. In addition to the speakers, we had 5 individuals that submitted statements on behalf of the school district. And what we are going to do is, first, all of these statements will be admitted to the public record as part of this hearing in their completeness. What we are going to do in an effort to represent them, but in the manner of fairness, is I'm going to read up to 3 minutes of the testimony that they have provided. In some cases, we have over 23 pages of testimony that have been provided. So for each of these folks, I will state their name, and then I will read their comments again up to 3 minutes of total time. So in order to get started, our first person who submitted comments is Nicole Haynes. She's a parent, and Nicole's comments start as this: block voting on resolutions must be banned by the RCSD policy revision. Resolutions should be voted on separately to allow for the following. Each time an RCSD staff member is bringing forth a resolution, I know that they are technically all brought to the board by the superintendent. but they come to the superintendent from a variety of staff members, which is clearly stated on the resolution. There should be a required public explanation of the necessity of the resolution, how it truly is aligned, how it will be specifically help RCSD reach that goal, how the work will be progress monitored and then evaluated for impact toward goal. The monitor so appropriately questioned a recent resolution covering over $500,000, and the board members did not even flinch. There were no specifics on how those being paid to provide credit recovery to support students were actually going to engage in the work, and how students were going to be given the maximum amount of access to the support. This allows for those hired to say they were available and get compensated, even if no student actually receives the support. Will there be requirements of documentation of effort prior to being compensated? Whatever current mechanism gives the board president the authority to discuss and vote on resolutions by block needs to be stricken from policy, and policy needs to be rewritten to ban such practice. Fewer resolutions can be discussed at each board meeting if needed. Academic performance status. East EPO replication must be prioritized and articulated as specific steps toward replication. Commissioner LeBron made an excellent point at the June 23rd board meeting. The East EPO was originally approved because of the emphasis on replication throughout the Rochester City School District. This point cannot be lost and must be given the highest priority. There is considerable research on replication failure that we can learn from. U of R, being a research institution, should be held responsible for ensuring that they pay attention to this research and have examination of replication as a component of everything that is done at East Lower and Upper schools. This should be a condition of the extension of the EPO. Although the extension was just approved, it should be amended. Some guiding questions for each intervention that works at East could be: in what context or contexts did this intervention work? Can the intervention be replicated in the RCSD with fidelity first and adaption second? Are there systematic barriers to replication in RCSD? What is the action plan for replication? And are there systems in place to study replication success and failure at East EPO to improve the rigor, relevance, and reproducibility in the RCSD? And that completes 3 minutes of those comments. And again, that was Nicole Haynes, a parent in the district. The second person who submitted comments is Rafili Pilia. She is a parent, and I will begin with her testimony. I would like to voice my concern regarding distance learning and the rumors we have been hearing about the possibility of this continuing into a new school year. As a parent, I can attest to how difficult and sometimes impossible it has been to try to substitute the teachers. We have seen our children numerous times unwilling to cooperate, cry because they want to see their friends and miss the social interaction, which is so essential to their mental health. This cannot go on, nor will any hybrid type of learning be productive. Our children need to go back to school and the parents need to go back to work. I understand that some parents are afraid or unsure whether they want to send their children back to school. However, it would be more democratic if schools reopened with proper measures such as mandatory hand washing or sanitizer use, staying home when sick, etc. Any parent who feels uncomfortable or has a child with pre-existing conditions should have the right to keep his child home, but this should not be the norm for the vast majority of children. Please take this into consideration, as I know I am one of the numerous parents who feel this way. Please do not underestimate the importance of our children's mental well-being, as the damage will be irrevocable. And that is the conclusion of her statement. Our next community member who submitted public comment is Howard Eagle. Mr. Eagle's comments are thorough and 23 pages. And it is a response to Dr. Aquino's report that he initially submitted back on December 29th of 2018, but he has submitted for the purpose of this hearing. So again, as I will begin his testimony and read for 3 minutes. A critical essential question is, are we ready to face necessary unavoidable confrontation in order to produce significant, measurable, fundamental change and improvement. First, as we had mentioned to Dr. Aquino when representatives of our leadership team met with him at Central Church of Christ on September 5th, 2018, and as we reiterated when he attended the community forum that we organized at Fight Village on September 20th, 2018, in spite of his good work, his November 14 report would not reveal anything fundamentally new or different regarding issues and problems that have been spelled out via scores of previous reports holds true. This is acknowledged in his report. It is stated on page 13, quote, "The issues identified in this report have been described in numerous earlier reports," end quote. We also mentioned this to Dr. Aquino, Commissioner Elia, and Chancellor Rosa during our meeting with them on the 14th of November, 2018, and we asked what makes their report different than the countless others that have been issued through the decades. Their response was, "This is the first time that such a report has been issued by the state. Whether that will matter in terms of change and improvement in the near future as opposed to the distant, abstract, by and by is yet to be seen." We also asked the three of them whether or not they would have the intestinal fortitude and political will to stand against forces such as the Rochester Teachers Association and possibly RTA's respective state and national affiliates, New York State United Teachers and American Federation of Teachers. They did not answer, so we shall see. Of course, time will tell. It always does. Another underscored area, our area of expertise, concentration, commitment, and leadership. We should state from the outset that Take It Down Planning Committee, Faith Community Alliance, Movement for Anti-Racist Ministry, and Action Coalition is unequivocally convinced that one, if not the most outstanding problem and issue within RCSD is the triple-headed problem and issue of individual, institutional, and structural racism, which underlies not only historical and contemporary racist policies, practices, procedures, rules, regulation, and laws, but also widespread negative, disrespectful attitudes, belief systems, and behaviors on the part of many RCSD employees vis-a-vis the overwhelming majority of RCSD students, parents, and families. This is mentioned in numerous sections of the report and has to do with the specific manners in which many educators, just like everyone else in US society, have been socialized. That is, the specifics of what they have been taught, in fact, that which, in many cases, has been drilled into their psyches from the crib up about poor, urban, in-city people of color, under the latter of whom many RCSD teachers and administrators never have any level of deep or sustained interaction, much less relationships, with prior to accepting their urban positions. Again, that is a statement provided by Mr. Howard Eagle. Our next fourth of 5 statements submitted prior to our meeting this evening was submitted by Kathy Smith, a community member. Hello, let me welcome you, Dr. Jallo, to RCSD. Your presence is welcome and long overdue. I plan to use this time to communicate the continued deficit that I see and have directly experienced between a district goal to connect with families, staff, and community. It is my sincere hope that you will be able to guide the board and the RCSD leaders in the direction of timely, informative, authentic communication and genuine dialogue. If I had not been on the meeting last night, I would not have known that June 25th, last minute awareness and not publicized anywhere other than the district website today and later to Facebook. Further complicating open communication is that the public hearing is scheduled for 5 p.m. instead of normal business meeting 6:30. I believe firmly that until we know better, we cannot do better. As a teacher, retired in the district, and a Rochester resident, I have always been concerned with too little, too late communication style of the district when the claim is, we want to hear from you. And then the actions are same old, same old. The purpose of the meeting June 25th is to seek public comment on, quote, existing statutory and regulatory authority of the Commissioner, the State Education Department, and the Board of Regents regarding school district governance and intervention under applicable state law and regulations, taken from the district website. The public invite states comment to the monitor directly and/or speak at the public forum with the BOE One step in the right direction is that there are links to notices with 4 languages provided. However, this is a problem too, since one would need to visit the site page in order to read the public notice. Nowhere on the district invite page is your name. How impersonal. What real efforts have been made to get the forum's dates, times, and purpose disseminated to the community? I have asked parents and teachers, and they report no robocalls, no liaison communication, and no informational letters either. Raising the question again, how well is the district communicating and engaging the community it serves? Unless one visits board meetings or the RCSD webpage daily, the information is not readily available. Why not? Everyone agrees students' engagement and participation is important, and it is necessary to work together to collaborate what methods and practices of how children in the district will receive their education. For instance, I believe that the district is able to collect data about the board meetings as it relates to how many are watching. I speak for myself that the meetings have been imperative for me to watch either live or later in order for me to make informed decisions and interpret board members' commitments, accountability, and priorities to the children and the community that they serve. I believe that every meeting reveals another important aspect to the board's commissioners' collective goals concerning their decision-making process for items like budget, policy, importance of the distinguished educators' reports, and board resolutions. In part, from the live Board of Education regularly scheduled meetings, which appear to be well attended, I believe that the families in the district, like me, are awake. It is time that district leaders come around to the fact that generations of children are lost to a continuum of academic and fiscal irresponsible inequities. Again, her complete statement will be filed in the public report and on the district website. That was not her complete statement. Okay, our final comment that was submitted tonight comes from Renee Joyner. Renee is a staff member, and so I will begin to read her comments. What an honor to have you with us. My email says employees, but for 32 years I have been a parent and a grandparent. On June 17th, my journey ended as a parent and my son graduated from James Monroe. My concern is who to believe in this war on education. My God has told me that Dr. Myers and Dr. Jallow is the leadership so many of us prayed and cried for. Forgive me for being long-winded. I hope that this reaches you and not a delete button as so many I sent of concern have. I put my livelihood on the line this morning, but I am no longer afraid of the silos and the cliques that have diminished our educational system. My question to you are as follows. Per the Distinguished Educators Report, the abuse and intimidation in the Human Capital Department, the civil service laws that they are bounded by. How did myself and my colleague file multiple retaliation and harassment cases against the Director of Office and Parent Engagement, and they were allowed to throw it away by a phony inside investigation? I know the answer because it was proven that my colleague, who has been employed for 25 years, application was discarded for that position by the HCI department. The interview process went against civil service regulation and requirement of 5 years in education and a bachelor's in education. The previous deputy superintendent and chief of staff targeted us for an OCR complaint filed by a parent that a white teacher not only hit an African-American male student, she called him a racial slur, and we would not cover it up. We began to get frivolous disciplinary write-ups. I served at central office 5 years, and given that I am a single mother, it forced me to transfer out of a job I love with all my soul. My body of work speaks for my character, not the lies those in silos put forth continuously about myself and another colleague. More so, my analytic data does not lie on who saw the parents solved the conflict cases. A colleague was provisional and not even 6 months in and blocked me from my job duties and then asked of the parents. I can speculate on relationship of Community Foundation being a grant provider or community organizations that influenced why an uncertified, unqualified person would be put over such a vital piece of this community. I am still weighing if I take this to the federal level, given that I felt I have no choice but to leave a position that I not only worked behind, that I worked my behind off. I abandoned the parents who relied on me to fight for them. So that concludes our public comment section. We had 5 speakers that signed up, 4 that were able to join us tonight, and we had 5 people submit public comment that, again, we have read up to 3 minutes of their time. As we wrap up tonight, we would like to thank everyone who participated in today's virtual hearing. Your participation shows your commitment to improving education in the Rochester City School District. Personally, I'd like to apologize to folks for the technical difficulties we had at the beginning. Appreciate the folks from RCSD who worked behind the scenes to get it fixed. They did a wonderful job. A record of this public hearing will be made available on the district's website. Answers to any questions that were not addressed in this hearing that are relevant to the topic will also be available in the public record. A second hearing on the academic performance of the district will be held on July 8th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. A third hearing on the fiscal performance of the district will be held on July 22nd from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Information about those hearings will also be available on the district's website. With that, I thank you. We shall conclude this public meeting. Be well, stay safe. Good night, all.